Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of your guiltiest pleasure, the Bear Bar Tales. It's okay, we don't judge you here. It is I, the one bear brave enough to say no, Charmin. I'll stick with my Kirkland brand toilet paper, thank you very much. The one and only Bear Bard. Today we have a little something special, as this story is actually part of a series of 3 stories. Now, it all seemed a bit much for one humble bear to handle on his own, so I brought backup today. I'd like to welcome 2 of YouTube's finest.
I am Jacob Crowe of the Crow's Perch.
And
MrKapao of Fantastic Tales of Adventure.
I'm so stoked to be able to work with both these super talented creators. As I said before, this is a series of 3. The first part you'll find on the Fantastic Tales of Adventure channel. The second will be on Crow's Perch. And finally, if you're ready for part 3, you're already in the right place. If you need to get caught up, links will be down below to their channels. Just make sure to come back and finish the story off right. If you like this type of content and want to hear more, make sure to subscribe. Also make sure to give those other guys a sub and let them know who sent you. For those of you who've seen the first 2, let's finish this thing off, shall we? The story today is titled The Backstabbing GM. This is the exact group in my previous stories about the White Knight GM. Both stories happen simultaneously. You don't need to read the other stories to understand this one, however. Lucky for all of you, you have 2 other videos already ready for you with those stories. The bad GMing is one thing, but the context makes it hurtful, for me at least. We were players and GMs over 10 years together, consecutively. We hung out occasionally, but only within groups. It's fine, I thought. We don't need to be close friends, but I considered him a friend nonetheless. Turns out he fooled me. In return, he hated my guts. He just didn't want to show it because I seemed popular enough to not openly resent me. His f***ing words. And GMing was the perfect opportunity to get rid of me without risking exposure. About me? To understand, you need to know a little about me as a player. My preferences, more precisely. I come to the table for a cooperative game and go a long way to ensure this. Things don't need to be done by the power of friendship, but functioning colleagues is a must. If the game gets backstabby, secretive, or whatever players/PCs do to disrupt one another, I don't care for your reasoning. I leave the table. I don't intend to elaborate on this, but I always let my fellow players know. Yes, don't be a dick. You have to work together. Prologue. We played the Dark Eye, DSA 4 back then, but for simplicity's sake, I'll use D&D terms. It's not a perfect match, but it'll work good enough for the story. A friend, and one of the best GMs I know, has been planning a campaign about religion and religious groups. He studied something close to anthropology and knows a lot about this stuff. We were hyped, and we created characters. Sadly, he had to cancel in favor of a work project last minute. The backstabbing GM, which we'll call BSGM, jumped in and offered to GM something similar. Up till then, he too had been a decent GM, so we were happy for the replacement. Although we were conscious about our expectations. It's a different GM and with a different campaign after all. To ease us into the other campaigns, the BSGM told us to keep our characters. Character non-creation. I took a closer look at the paladin-styled character I made with quite precise notes about his convictions, which made sense for the other GM and was already greenlit. For some regular campaign, this could all be useless at best and problematic at worst. So I went to the BSGM to talk about this. He went on to compliment me how well done this was and how perfectly this all fit into his campaign. My character specifically was quite important to his plans, and my motivations could drive some of the plot. Also, characters are already created and roles are set, so I know already that this PC will be a good fit with the rest of the PCs. Besides, he doesn't want to go through a whole session 0 again to coordinate roles within the group. Alright, I'm sold. Let's keep the paladin around. So, we skipped session 0, went straight to session 1. People introduced their characters, and no way. I was the only player with his original character. Now, my goody two-shoes paladin was in a group with a black mage, a witch, a cleric, and an opposing deity, FML. I asked the BSGM, yo, WTF? He urged me to give the group a chance and to let this unfold. The players knew what they were doing, and he made extra sure by guiding them through the creation process. Okay, I guess? I suggested making a new character anyway. I'm not that attached to the PC, and it'll smooth things over just in case. But I was told no, a very firm no. The BSGM made clear that my character was too important and cannot be replaced. I was suspicious about this, but had no tangible arguments, so I went along. The Rogue. Remember what I told you about cooperating and secrecy? Now, let me introduce to you Gary. Gary played a nobleman, seemingly. He was kind of the face of the group, managed the group finances, and traded with merchants. All these things. We went a couple sessions without major hiccups, and thanks to some decent RP, with a little help of some healthy metagaming, we actually were able to make these characters believable colleagues in dungeoneering. I was quite relieved. The only odd thing was equipment disappearing all the time, only small items of medium value. It was annoying. We investigated, but came to no conclusions. Then, we found a cursed book about demons. I loved that because my character's order was about collecting knowledge, especially on the god's enemies. So, I had to make a tough decision, end the curse and destroy the book, or accept being cursed and give the book to the order. I decided the latter. We traveled back to town and the book was gone. Just like that, I was still cursed, mind you. Skip ahead. An NPC priest from my order, that was actually a friend of my PC, died off screen. I buried him and took his holy symbol in remembrance. Jesus. I buried him and took his holy symbol in remembrance. I thought it was cool. Suddenly, this symbol vanishes too. I started yet another investigation of what happened, but to no avail. Skip further ahead, our noble was in trouble. He used a rather unique ability. Barney, the player next to him, noticed that there was no such ability on his sheet. The BSGM didn't check on the sheet. He just told us it's fine and urged the group to move on. But Barney and I caught on. After the session, I went to the BSGM and confronted him. It was obvious that Gary was playing some sort of rogue and conned us and probably is the one stealing all the items. Now, I can bear some minor items missing if it makes Gary feel better about himself. But the book and the symbol? That's sabotaging another player and I'm not having that. But this went nowhere. The BSGM just shrugged it off. He told me in truth, Gary plays another cleric of yet another deity. And since his deity's domain is theft, greed, and selfishness, Gary is actually playing his role well. So I need to deal with it. My argument about me hating this playstyle since forever went over his head, seemingly. But we'll get to that later. However, I also talked to Gary. He tuned it down a bit, problem solved. Please power game so I can nerf you. Turns out every character had decent social skills. Every single one. I was quite happy with that, but the BSGM was not. He came to me and requested I tune my socializing in character down. That confused the hell out of me. We went back and forth for a while to reiterate. He said that there are too many PCs socializing at once. He doesn't want to play so many social encounters. Sad, but okay. Also, there's a lot of combat ahead, and we focused on advancing the wrong skills. I should put all my skills in combat from now on. I called BS on that one. He reiterated that he had a role planned out for me, and I have the wrong skill set to fill that role. Now, that's a whole new level of BS. This conversation went nowhere. A while later, the BSGM came to me again. Combat was about to get seriously difficult for us, and he wasn't willing to do half-assed combat encounters for us. I was confused as to why, but he requested me to trust him on this and that it's necessary to up the difficulty. To survive his campaign, I needed to power up my character. I still found this highly suspicious. Also, I still didn't want to invest into combat only, so I suggested picking up some pretty OP feats that might do the trick as a compromise. Now, I'm aware that those were considered power gamey, but it seemed that's what he wanted. And it was a quick and easy way to power up without investing 100%. GM agreed and let me buy the feats right the next session, with a teacher in place and all. Skip a few sessions ahead. A huge siege on the city we were living in, a huge army of orcs, and some ogres sprinkled in for good measure. Now, the BSGM let the orcs build a nice queue for us to slay them one by one. It was easy as hell and boring. Then, the BSGM moved the challenge up to ogres. Fair enough. The ogres came in. I tried my new combat powers on him, and the ogre went down like a bitch in one hit. The overall combat wasn't satisfying, but one-shotting an ogre was at least funny. The BSGM got sour immediately. That's not how these feats work. I used them intentionally wrong. Now, I can take a rule discussion, but intentionally? But I can diffuse this easily and without making a fuss. So I pull out the rulebook and have a look during another player's turn. That's when he snaps, takes the book from my hand, and shouts at me for wasting everybody's time at the table with looking up rules. Because I won't find a rule in favor of my interpretation. I already found it, by the way, and by undermining his authority, alright, yeah, you got me, your authority stinks. The situation got heated. No point in arguing any further. I mentally checked out for the rest of the session and went along with his ruling. After the session, I wanted to get back to this, but no. BSGM was still fuming and further accused me of being ignorant towards the rules. Time to leave the table, eh? Right there, I was convinced that he's only mad because his siege backfired and sucked. I was the only one with a modicum of fun there, and it showed. I decided to leave and wait for him to cool down. Good players don't have fun. Well, before the siege began, BSGM asked me a peculiar question that only became important after. How far would I go with my PC if I needed to do something terrible against my PC's convictions? It's a difficult question, but I think I have a good answer. I'd go pretty far to avoid going against my beliefs. That's what piety does. I get the vibe that my PC's religion is standing in the way of something, and if it's not a good fit, I'll make a new character. But he denied it, saying it's actually the answer he wanted to hear. BSGM clarifies that my character is too important to leave for what he has planned. I'm not allowed to switch characters. Also, it would be a waste if I didn't play the next part with this character, as there'll be some deep RP I'll absolutely enjoy. Skip ahead into Siege. Orc army was pushed back. Reinforcements on the way, we were clearly winning. Then, we discovered a vampire lurking in the city. We were close to capturing him, but BSGM threatened us out of game. He'd TPK us if we tried. The group was pissed. It was obvious railroading. Out of the blue, I was requested to leave the room. Well, okay then. After I was invited back, the whole group looked at me guilty as hell. I asked what happened, and despite the GM's initial protests, Wilma, player of the witch, just straight up told me everything because she felt bad. The commander of our city decided to team up with the vampire to wipe the almost retreating orcs. And of course, everyone expected me to reject the idea and go against the commander. They were encouraged by the GM, out of game, to follow and let the vampire convert the soldiers into an army of thralls. We're playing an evil party now. FML. This sucks. We need to talk. Of course, I suggested a new character. But still, I was told no because my character is too important for what he has planned. Only that I get the idea that the plan is simply to torture me. The BSGM went on to tell everyone how unreasonable I am, that I'm a shitty role player for neither wanting to play evil characters nor wanting to play in a hostile group dynamic, especially since my character would have blocked all plot progression by disallowing these, what he called, group decisions. Wilma, her boyfriend Fred, and me packed our things and left. Fred remarked that none of this was any player's decision in the first place. I'm happy I bullied you. BSGM contacted me through, I think, Steam, only this time after the other story, I was prepared. First, he asked me to clarify if I left for now or for good, and had a bunch of other stuff. Nothing unreasonable. But then came some off comments about how I'm not a good player since I can't put my personal issues and preferences aside. This was just dumb. I decided not to answer, but to ask something else instead. I knew this guy as a GM for quite a long time. He was a better GM than this. He is smarter than this, and most importantly, this was all easily predictable. Now, keep in mind, back in the day, the Steam Messenger didn't save conversations. He had abused this fact a couple of times in the previous story. He openly admitted that he always resented me. He didn't want me in his social circle, but since everyone else seemed to like me and invite me all the time, he didn't want to be singled out and played along. He also admitted he knew I'd hate this, and this will be a good chance to bully me out. Now, he's happy it worked. I screenshot the whole thing, sent it to everyone without further comment. He got uninvited to Fred and Wilma's wedding, couple of B-Day parties, and more within a week. We don't speak about him anymore. TLDR, GM, considered friend, used the game to bully me out of his social circles. Spoiler, in the end, he gets too cocky and it backfires. Well, how about that for a cap to this dynamic saga? It was like Lord of the Rings' angstier younger cousin. Right off the bat, I can't fathom this level of petty. It's like instead of being honest and just telling dude he doesn't want to play with him, he sits there and goes out of his way just to act stupid and try to get the dude to quit. I mean, this is a guy you've been around for 10 years. Enough time to know the guy well enough that you can design a campaign he would hate. If you're going to spend all that time getting to know the guy, maybe try finding reasons that you'd like him. Maybe design a campaign he'd enjoy. I mean, he stole your partner on prom night 20 years ago and you still think about it levels of petty. I've truly never understood people's need to be so damn passive aggressive and refuse to just get their issue out and solved. I mean, I'm not sure I really even need to go through the individual individual crap the DM did because he basically went into the opposite of everything you're supposed to do as a good DM, which tells me that he actually can be a decent DM. He knows what to do, but just to mess with the OP, he went against it all. It's like getting a 0 on a true-false quiz. Even going in blind, you'd get at least some right. I mean, I want to know what OP did that created so much animosity. You have to be mad to be willing to tailor an entire campaign and blowing up your entire friends group just to mess with one guy. I can't think of a single person in my life that I would go through that much effort just to work against. I mean, I have trouble keeping up with the DMing of the group I like, much less keep up with DMing a spite campaign. I mean, seriously, I just said the words spite campaign. If that doesn't perfectly encapsulate this guy's crazy, then I don't know what will. I mean, you have a guy who skipped session 0, refused to let him change his character, and even threw a fit when he found the answer. Not that he wanted to look and waste time, but he was respectful, waited till the next turn, and found the answer on his own. I mean, what kind of level of crazy do you have to be to just pull that? And now, switching gears, here's your bear fact of the week. While they are one of the apex predators, grizzly bears' main diet includes nuts, fruit, leaves, berries, and roots. However, they, on occasion, hunt small animals and rodents, and the occasional camper that doesn't clean up his mess. I'd like to seriously thank both Jacob Crowe and MrKapao for helping out with these stories. These guys are both super talented, and if you're into these stories, make sure to sub to their channels and let them know who sent you. Quick, favorite bear and favorite system.
My favorite kind of bear? Well, I have to pick the best bear, which is obviously the black bear. My favorite TRPG? I typically play with my brother and he goes through tons of different RPGs, so I'll give you a top 3. Blades in the Dark by John Harper, Ironsworn by Sean Tompkin, and Numenera by Monty Cook Games. Honorable mentions Call of Cthulhu and Savage Worlds Adventure Edition.
Favorite bear. Let's go with the Sloth Bear. And for my favorite TTRPG system, for the moment, let's go with Pathfinder 2nd Edition because it's what I'm mainly playing these days.
Well, that's something we know about them now. Would have been nice if the Bear Bard was their favorite bear, but you know, whatever. But I think that's where I'm going to call it for a day. I want to thank you guys again for all the support. As of this recording, we're just over 200 subs and growing. I've loved hearing from all of you about your experiences and your opinions. If you have an opinion on anything that happened in this story, make sure to leave it in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video, make sure to give it a like and tap that sub button so you can get more of your fuzzy neighborhood Bear Bard. If you want to see more Bear Bard, you can connect with me on Discord, subreddit, Facebook, or Twitter. You can also check out the Bear Bard Tales podcast, available on all major podcast distributors. At the moment, I just have stories from the channel on there, but I'm working on something with a little more substance and maybe some special guests, so make sure to follow the podcast. For now though, this has been the Bear Bard,
MrKapao of Fantastic Tales of Adventure.
And I am Jacob Crowe.
Stay kind, stay beautiful, and we'll see you next time.